The year was 1880 and winter winds swept across the Wyoming plains. The small town of Red Creek lay quiet, its few wooden buildings standing against the wide empty land. That morning a wagon rattled into town carrying a woman and a child. The woman wore a faded dress, her face pale, her eyes heavy with secrets. The boy clutched her hand tightly as if the world itself might take him if he let go. From the porch of the general store, Caleb Turner watched them. He was a man of broad shoulders and silent ways, a rancher who spoke little and kept to himself. His hat shadowed eyes that had seen too much loss. When the wagon stopped and the woman stepped down, she stumbled slightly. The bruise at her temple caught the light, though she tried to hide it beneath her hair. The townsfolk pretended not to see, yet their whispers filled the street. Caleb did not join them. He only studied the stranger and felt something stir in the silence of his chest. A quiet thought that he could not name. A thought that would not let him look away. The woman carried her son into the general store. The room smelled of wood smoke and flour sacks. Her voice was soft when she asked for bread, but the shopkeeper only stared at the bruise and hesitated. Before she could speak again, another presence filled the doorway. Caleb Turner stepped inside. His boots echoed against the floor, his hat still low over his brow. He said nothing at first, only set coins on the counter and pushed the loaf toward her. "Take it," he said quietly. His voice was steady, carrying no judgment, only a kind of weight she could not name. The woman met his eyes for the first time, and in that glance the air between them changed. He saw not weakness, but a strength hidden beneath her silence, and she saw not just a rancher, but a man who had known sorrow and still stood unbroken. The boy tugged at her hand as if urging her away. She thanked Caleb in a whisper and left quickly. But long after the door shut, the quiet lingered. Between them a silence heavier than words. Snow began to fall that evening, soft and slow over the roofs of Red Creek. Caleb was leading his horse from the livery when he saw her again. She stood outside the boarding house holding her son close, her shoulders trembling as though the cold might break her. She had nowhere left to go, and the keeper was already turning her away. Caleb stopped. He did not ask for her story nor the name of the man who had left those bruises. He only stepped forward, his voice low and certain. "You and the boy, you are coming with me." For a moment she did not breathe. Her eyes searched his face for cruelty or pity, but found neither. Only steadiness carved deep as the mountains themselves. She wanted to refuse, yet her son's small hand tightened around hers, and she knew the road behind was gone. Slowly she nodded. Caleb lifted the boy into the saddle, then offered her his hand. She hesitated just long enough to feel the weight of the choice, then placed her hand in his. The horse moved forward, carrying them into the white silence of the plains. The trail wound through open country where the wind carried nothing but silence, and the sound of hooves. By the time they reached the ridge, night had fallen. Stars burned sharp in the sky. Caleb drew the horse to a stop and pointed below. In the hollow stood his ranch house, a plain wooden frame with smoke rising from the chimney. The barn leaned slightly, the fences rough, but the light inside was steady. He lifted the boy down first, then helped her step to the ground. Her boots sank into snow and she stared at the small house. It was no mansion, only walls against the wind, yet to her it seemed more shelter than she had known in years. Caleb pushed the door open. The warmth of fire greeted them. His voice was calm but firm. "You and the boy will be safe here." She did not answer, only stood holding her son close, her eyes glistening in the firelight. She had crossed miles of fear to reach this night, and for the first time she felt the faint shape of rest. Days passed with snow pressing hard against the windows. Caleb worked the fences and cared for the horses, while she kept the fire burning and the boy warm. They spoke little, yet the silence between them was not empty. It was a silence that held questions unasked and answers unspoken. At night she would catch him sitting alone by the fire, his hands rough and scarred, his gaze fixed on flames that told of battles long past. She wondered what ghosts lived behind those eyes. He never asked about her bruises, but she felt his steady watch each time fear rose in her chest. The boy began to follow him in the mornings, small boots crunching through the snow. Caleb slowed his steps, letting the child keep pace, and for the first time the boy laughed in the cold air. The sound startled her. It had been so long since she heard it. In that moment she saw what words could not hide. Caleb Turner was not a man of pity. He was a man who built walls against pain yet offered shelter without demand. And in the hush of winter she began to wonder if she had found more than safety. The snow began to melt when the first rider came. He was broad-shouldered with a scar down, his joy and eyes that carried the cruelty of remembered nights. He stopped at the fence line, his horse stamping restless, and called her name. The sound froze her where she stood with the boy clutched to her side. Caleb stepped out from the barn, his rifle resting easy in his hands. His voice was low but unshaken. "You rode a long way, best you turn back now." The man only laughed hard and sharp. "I came for what belongs to me." He looked past Caleb to the woman and the child. Her face drained of color, yet she did not hide this time. She stood in the doorway trembling but unbroken. The rider leaned forward in his saddle smirking. Caleb raised the rifle steady as stone, his eyes dark with a promise. "The boy stays. The woman stays, you leave." The plains went quiet, the only sound was the wind, and the faint creak of leather as both men waited for the other to move. The man in the saddle sneered and reached for his gun, but Caleb did not flinch. The cold steel of the rifle never wavered. His voice cut through the wind, firm and final. "You cross this fence and you will not ride back." For a long moment the rider's grin held, then faltered. He looked into Caleb's eyes and saw not bluff but iron, the kind of strength that only comes from a man with nothing left to lose and nothing he will allow to be taken again. With a curse he pulled his reins sharp. His horse turned and thundered back across the plain, until the sound of hoofs faded into silence. The woman stood in the doorway, her breath trembling in the air. She met Caleb's gaze across the yard, and for the first time her fear loosened. He lowered the rifle, but his eyes never left her. She saw not just the man who had given her shelter, but the man who would fight for her, stand for her, and never walk away. That night when the boy slept by the fire she whispered a single word, "Thank you," and in that quiet "thank you," Caleb Turner felt something stir deep and unshaken. The beginning of a life no longer lived alone. The story does not end here. It is only the first chapter of a journey across the wide frontier, where love and danger walk side by side. If you want to ride further into this tale of courage and love, make sure to subscribe now so you do not miss what comes next.